Thursday.
July. Excellent. Kevin Allen will be joining us shortly. He's on another podcast, that two-timing bastard.
Oh.
Yeah. How dare he do another podcast? All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. Nothing going on today. It's just Thursday, July 23rd. It's the end of July, 2015.
I'm Russ Cohen from the Beagles.
That's Russ. That's Ty. And this is Mike on the phone right here. So since we kind of screwed up our beginning. And it's Mike. Mike is calling us from the lovely province of Ontario as he's speeding his way towards a press conference with Lou Lamoriello, which is a lot like speeding your way towards a Quaker Meeting House church service. But it's still going to be interesting. And now, Mike, obviously the news of today, which is impossible to not know about at this point, I would think, if you're a hockey fan, is that Lou Lamoriello has indeed been hired. He resigned as president of the Jersey Devils, and he now is officially been hired as GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, thus completing the this was of course foreseen in the Book of Revelations. But anyway, so Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I thought this was going to happen all along.
Yeah, right.
No, I mean, it took me as a bit of a surprise, but in the aftermath of the decision, it sort of makes sense. I mean, in terms of, I think the plan going forward, and obviously I don't think they're going to mention this at the press conference, is that Kyle Dubas is more than likely the new general manager of the Maple Leafs in 2 or 3 years. But he doesn't have a lot of experience, and I think Lou Lamoriello is not ready to, go by the way of being a senior advisor, which I think he would have been in New Jersey to Ray Shero, and this is a challenge. And Brendan Shanahan respects and trusts Lou Lamoriello, and as he should, because he's someone with a great resume and has a lot of gravitas and a lot of respect within the league. And I think that the Leaf organization needs someone of his stature to come in and help a rather inexperienced management group in finding their way. And I think that it's a good hire. It's going to be very interesting to see how the dynamic will work between Lamoriello, Shanahan, Mike Babcock, and Hunter and Dubas. But right now, I think it's a reason for Toronto fans to be excited.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think there's definitely it's definitely hard to tell what's going to happen with that combination of people. This is I talked to somebody this morning who was in the hockey world, and he actually said to me, when you look back on this, I mean, at risk of ending up with a horse's head in my bed or swimming with the fishes, there's definitely, you can see how Ray Shero takes the job, Lou Lamoriello sticks around. The Maple Leafs just don't have a GM. They just go on their lives, go about their lives. And Lou obviously set up New Jersey and then got out of there. I think that's what he did. That's just my opinion. And that this was known for a while. I would venture to say that this was known before Babcock was even hired as coach. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I mean, the only reservation and the only concern I have regarding this, and it's minute compared to other things, the fact that Toronto, as with Babcock, is going to have to get New Jersey draft pick compensation. They're going to have to give them a third-round pick for Lou Lamoriello. If my theory is true that Lamoriello is going to be around 2 to 3 years as sort of a mentor to Kyle Dubas, then that's an awful expensive price to pay. I mean, money is no object with MLS&E, but the draft pick, even though they have 11 draft picks next year, a draft pick is a draft pick, and especially with the team that needs to restock their shelves, giving up a draft pick for Lou Lamoriello on top of giving up one for Babcock is a steep price to pay. But I think that they're going to get more draft picks with the trades that they're going to make throughout the year. And I also think that Lamoriello is going to be able to make deals that somebody like Kyle Dubas would not be able to. I think he'll be able to go to other GMs, and he has the contacts throughout the league that can enable a deal for a guy like a Tyler Bozak or a Joffrey Lupul going down the road. But I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Players like Lou. I mean, I do think this helps them as far as getting players go. Lou is very popular among players. You find that too, Russ, right?
Oh, yeah, there's no question. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about him player-wise. He's always had a far reach in the college ranks, and that's a way for the Leafs to sort of reach out and get some of those guys. They've been getting them, and I know some people in the Toronto area get mad, but they could really find some guys because Lou has connections at a lot of schools. But the other thing is, look, now that they have Lamoriello, now that they have Babcock, it wouldn't shock me if David Conte all of a sudden shows up on the Toronto Maple Leafs doorstep.
Yeah.
They're only going to be willing to be bad for one more year after this year. I'm telling you right now, they're going to get good whether Toronto fans want them to or not. Mark my words.
Lou is not synonymous with patience, and not synonymous with going into a position when he doesn't control things. Kevin Allen is joining us now after betraying us with another podcast.
That would be my own podcast, by the way.
Yeah, okay. Well, still, that's still betrayal. So anyway, we're talking. We've got Mike on the phone here, heading to Toronto, speeding his way towards the press conference, and we're finishing up with Mike. I'm going to let you go, Mike, because I know you're on. You're on. It's probably costing about $35 a minute to talk to us right now. So.
Sounds good. I kept my streak intact, so I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Good job. We'll talk to you then. That was Michael Jello. He will give us more updates later from the scene of the crime there. Lou Lamoriello. Now, Kevin, I'm going to bring up what I just brought up, and then I want your and Ty's opinion on this. I talked to somebody today, and I'm not saying there was collusion or anything like this involved, but so I talked to somebody who's pretty high up at one of the other teams who says it really looks like Lou got Shiro into New Jersey, stuck around for the draft, and Toronto just didn't have a GM for a while. It's as if he did. I don't think this was out of the blue. You know what I mean? I feel like this was planned a while ago. Any thoughts, Kev, on that? Or?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think it happened yesterday for sure. Collusion aside, does it really matter?
No, it doesn't matter. It's just. And Lou did the right thing. I mean, he set up the team. He set up New Jersey. He did the right. I mean, I'm not saying he did the wrong thing. I just think that.
Well, and I think everybody got what they wanted. I mean, there's been an undercurrent for a couple of seasons now that the ownership in New Jersey, concerned about the lack of attendance, wanted a more entertaining team, and Lou Lamoriello wanted to do things the way he likes to do them, and. So he hired he made a good hire in Ray Shero, and he is the tradition that he established will continue on, and he gets to go to a team where he won't have to concern himself with marketing and style of play. But this is just such a great hire. Like
it is.
I think it really says a lot about Brendan Shanahan. Like. And it's not quite the same, but the general managers I admire most are the guys who will hire people who are capable of replacing them.
Yes.
And to me, what that says is that GM is confident, and all he's concerned about is making the team, and he wants to be surrounded by talent. And I think a lot of us thought that Brendan Shanahan was going to be pulling the strings behind the scenes, and boy, we were wrong, weren't we?
Yeah, no, Lou Lamoriello is not going to come into a job where someone else is pulling the strings.
No, he's never going to be a yes man. And Lou Lamoriello has a long history of being a defensive-minded management figure. We just had on the other day, you asked the question of who had given up the fewest number of goals in X amount of years, and the answer was the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
Even when they didn't make the playoffs, they've been good defensively. And what has been the biggest problem the Maple Leafs have had recently? They can't keep the puck out of their net.
Yeah, I thought that too.
So I just think this is a great fit, and now they have the holy trinity there of Brendan Shanahan, Mike Babcock, and Lou Lamoriello. These are three great hockey minds, and it'll be interesting. The one thing I would say, and I don't think this is not a worry, but Lou Lamoriello has never had a situation like he has now, where the coach is all powerful.
Right.
In the Holy Trinity, everyone's equal. Because what are you going to do? Fire Mike Babcock? If Lou Lamoriello trades for a guy and Mike Babcock doesn't like him, Guess what?
Yeah, yeah. No, you're dead on right. It is like a dream team type scenario.
You know what I hearken it to? The days when Conn Smythe was sort of running the Leafs, and then all of a sudden he became GM because he was a committee chairman, and they fired a GM, and so like Conn Smythe stepped into that GM job for a couple of years, and I think Lou, it's the same thing. He's stepping into this job for a couple of years with the same kind of swagger that a Conn Smythe had back in the day.
That makes sense. And so Ty, is there any truth to the fact that the Leafs front office is now getting paid more than the Arizona Coyotes? Probably.
Honestly, I think this is a good move for the Maple Leafs for sure. We talked about this, I think, earlier, where it's very tough to see Lou Lamoriello just kind of stepping back and being an advisor. I mean, we all know how hands-on he is. We all know the pride that this guy has as a GM, and I just thought that this seemed fitting for him. You know, moving to Toronto, he can step in and be a hero here in a few years if they get right back on track. And, you know, like Russ talked about, he has such a great reach in the college ranks, and that will absolutely help the Leafs out in the long run, I think, in terms of when you see these guys that are jumping from the NCAA to the NHL and just the maturity that they have when they step into the pros. I think it's such a commodity for any team, really. But, no, this is a great move for the Leafs. I mean, you talk about Brendan Shanahan, Mike Babcock, and Lou Lamoriello. These are three guys that by now they know a lot about one another. And that's going to think almost immediately for the Leafs, really.
Oh, yeah.
I know this is a rebuild. I know they're retooling, but you're going to see success a lot quicker than you would with any of the three figureheads, I think, in my opinion, just based on these guys and their experience and how well they know one another.
It has to be. And, you know, and I wrote today that, you know, patience is not something that generally has gone along with Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello. I mean, these are two guys that aren't patient people for this whole 3-year. You know, I don't expect Lou Lamoriello to go up there and say we're going to have 3 years of pain today. Maybe, you know, I mean, I know that's the company line, but I don't.
He'll pump the brakes to some degree, but we sort of know behind the scenes that it's going to go a lot better, I think, than Leafs fans had imagined. And I think they're not going to, you know, this one last year, they may, you know,
right,
deal with a bad team and maybe near the bottom, but I don't think that's going to last. I just don't. And like I said, David Conte's hanging out there now, and boy, I kind of wonder now if the Leafs will bite at that too.
Yeah.
So you're so wise, Russ. Yeah, I agree completely with everything you just said. This, you know, how much is Babcock worth? 8, 10, 12 points, just in terms of the way he prepares. And how much is Lou Lamoriello? I mean, I have watched Lou Lamoriello for almost 30 years now, 27 years. You know, I was covering the league when he came in. And his modus operandi is to evaluate his team in the first 2 months of the season and then start to tinker with it. He's done it for a lot of years.
Yeah.
You know, he makes in-season trades, and he will do the same with this team. Like anyone who thinks that they're going to be gearing up to get a top 5 draft pick, that's not the way Lou Lamoriello and Mike Babcock operate. They're going to try to improve this team as they go along. So. You know, I mean, they're still going to build through the draft and they're going to try to acquire prospects, but you know, I don't see them. I think they'll get competitive a lot quicker than people think.
They have to. I mean, they just have to. And this is not a completely untalented team. You know, it's interesting now. The Dion Phaneuf thing today. I did a Mad Lib thing on Twitter. You know, that said to finish the sentence. You know, Mike Babcock plus Lou Lamoriello plus Dion Phaneuf equals what? You know. Give me your answer, Russ.
I don't know. It's a good one. To me, it equals a winning franchise. That's what it equals.
I mean, this could be the perfect person. I mean, Dion Phaneuf now is surrounded by people. If anyone can get Dion Phaneuf going, it's Lou and Babcock. You know, I mean, they really seem like they're the two. I mean, Dion's not that different than, you know, Scott Stevens of the day, sort of. You know, that's why he came into the league. He was being compared to Scott Stevens all the time. Now, you know,
I don't know that you have to get Dion Phaneuf going. I think you just have to change the perception of what he is.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay.
I mean, you know, like the Red Wings wanted Dion Phaneuf because they weren't looking at him as a top pairing defenseman. They wanted him to come in and give them some toughness and play in their second pairing. If Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello and Brendan Shanahan and the media in Toronto will just simply change the way that and point out and try to get everyone to understand that Phaneuf is not a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, you're going to be real happy with him.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, Ty. I mean, thoughts on this one? When you look at the two teams, I know Babcock has his detractors. People who say that Babcock is what he is because he had so many great players in Detroit, so many Hall of Famers. Lou Lamoriello has the same kind of detractors in this division. He had Marty Brodeur. It's easy to be the best defensive team in the league when you've got Marty Brodeur. And he had Stevens and he had Niedermeyer. So these are two guys that have always had quite a bit of talent under their disposal. I mean, they've made teams better, but they've also had big talent. That's what I wonder, Ty. You're more familiar with that division than anything else. How do you think this is going to be perceived?
I mean, I think it's going to be fine because I look at this division and I think the Atlantic is wide open. I mean, you have two powerhouses really, but for the rest of the division, it's relatively wide open. And I think that when you have these sort of minds in power, you're going to have success. I mean, we like Russ and Kevin talked about. I just think that I look at what Lou Lamoriello did with the Devils for years. I mean, they've hit a bit of a rough patch these past few seasons. There's no denying that. But before that, it was a 25-year stretch here where I think he brought them to 5 Stanley Cups. They made the playoffs all but a couple of seasons, and some of those teams weren't necessarily juggernauts. They weren't exactly the most skilled or the most offensively loaded teams, but they knew how to play the game, and they had the right coaching and the right philosophy and the right mindset. And he made tough decisions when he had to, and he acquired assets when they thought that they could compete. And I never found that he gave up a tremendously huge package going one way when it came to what he would trade away. So I look at that. I look at this whole thing here, and I think I identify Dion Phaneuf as a player that you want to keep now. I identify James Van Riemsdyk as a guy you want to keep. I mean, Bozak is still the one that I think you should look into trading. If you can get something for him, you absolutely do it. But some of these pieces here, you don't look at them as expendable anymore. You look at them as guys that you think that they could really fine-tune and make into legitimate top sixers or top pairing or top 4 defense, whatever you want. So I think they're a lot closer now with this acquisition here.
Yeah, they are closer.
And one more, Lou is very close to Ilya Kovalchuk. They really liked each other a lot.
Oh, yeah, they did. I know. That's a great point.
And so, who's to say in a year they don't reach out to him and try and bring him back to the NHL? Because we know he wants to come back. He's not an old guy, and he could be one of those missing pieces that all of a sudden you put him in that lineup, and now you've really upgraded that team in a year.
That's a great point.
Here's the thing that I think Russ knows as well, but I think a lot of fans don't really appreciate. The perception of Lou Lamoriello is that he's a grumpy guy, and far from it. He's very well liked by players. He's a straight shooter. You know where you stand front with him. Agents like dealing with him. He holds the line when he holds the line. But the best indication of what kind of GM that he is anybody who watched what happened when Zach Parise left the New Jersey Devils and compare that to what happened when Ryan Suter left the Nashville Predators. The reactions of the two camps were so completely different. And David Poyle's a class guy. But Lou Lamoriello had the conversation with Zach Parise. They sat down. They looked across the table from one another. They explained their situations, and they parted amicably. And the fact that Lou was able to do that when he lost his captain, I think just says, why he's been so successful. He understands the difference. It's not emotional with him. It's business and it's hockey, and he sorts through it. And he and Marty Brodeur were the best of friends when they played. And most agents that I've spoken to would rather deal with Lou Lamoriello on a contract than a lot of other GMs around the league.
Yeah, no, Lou has. I mean, I've seen Lou do a lot. Lou's an incredibly sensitive person, and that's, I agree with you completely. I mean, I like to paint him as this Godfather-esque type character because he does.
Well, he had an iron fist on the Devils.
He's got an iron fist on the Devils. I mean, one of my favorite moments was before the Stanley Cup final there was media day before the Devils Kings Stanley Cup final, and someone asked Lou about Lombardi and said, Lombardi told us that he came out here for a week and visited with you before he was a GM, and you kind of showed him the ropes, and he really credits that a lot. That learning experience. And Lou looked right at the reporter who said it and said, "He wasn't supposed to tell you that." Just like that. This is an immediate scrum. That's all he said about it.
I've seen him sign autographs for Devils fans. He will actually sign autographs.
Oh yeah, he will. No, and
it's one of those things. He just look the best. Here's the thing I can tell you about Lou. The first time I ever met him, the first game I ever covered was in Madison Square Garden. It was a preseason game between the Devils and the Rangers. The first guy I ever interviewed was Scott Gomez, and after I left the Devils locker room, Lou Lamoriello went up to then the Rangers PR person and said, "Who is that guy?" I'd never seen him before. And then she had to assure him that I was an okay hockey writer, and then he was fine with it. But that's how he fine-tunes. I mean, that's to the minor detail.
Everything. He had this triangle. I don't know if you ever heard the story that he would draw out for people, but this triangle, I've been told this by a couple people. On one side, it had one side of the triangle was he wrote player, the other he wrote team, the other wrote organization. And he said that all three of these things have to be equally important to you. You as a player, you as your team, and you as the entire organization. Meaning that he wanted the players to be nice to everybody, whether they sold tickets, whether they sold hot dogs, whatever it was. The players had to respect those people the same way. It was really important to him. And I know there were some run-ins with the firings. I know there's a lawsuit going on and stuff like that right now that happened towards the end. But it came down to the point. I remember one of the funniest stories is when the first time I ever realized that Lou Lamoriello actually read Hockey Buzz. I was talking to a player agent, and the player agent said, "The big guy reads you, right?" And I'm like, who's the big guy? Come on, the big guy, Lou Lamoriello. I'm like, okay, all right, all right then, But he has that kind of respect, and he also says it's very important to him that players are sensitive to the needs of people who work for the team. Like the little thing, like sensitivity, which is something you wouldn't expect from him being, the way his persona, that kind of stuff really matters to him.
But they're always professional, the Devils. Like anytime you've dealt with
they are.
From a media perspective, for interviews, nobody ever ducked an interview. Even after the Stanley Cup, I could interview any Devil. They would go and get them. Like none of that stuff was ever an issue, and that does fall on Lou. I mean, that's like, hey, we just hear about the thing is, after a while, when Lou's in an organization, he casts a big shadow. And since the Devils wanted to have a change, it's hard to keep Lou there. And
they had to do this. I agree with you.
Yeah.
They had to do this. I mean, the other thing he does really well, which is something that not many teams do, I think he does more than any other, is the idea of, team. People talk about the core, a team's core leadership group, of course. The leadership core to the New Jersey Devils has always been completely different than the leadership core of any other team, I found. There is, back in the day, it was Gianta, Elias, Brodeur, Stevens, Niedermeyer. And those guys, they had more power, I always felt, than the coach did of the Devils. I always felt like that they could go to Lou directly and say, he would listen to his players all the time.
He would.
More than a lot of GMs who say go to the coach. Marty Brodeur was allowed to basically pick his starts as a Devil. Like he would say, that I'll, if he wanted to start, Lou said, if you want to play, you play. That's how it goes. That's over the coach,
But it took a little while to get there. It's not like Jonathan Bernier could walk up to him and ask that.
No, of course not. But that's the kind of when Lou believes in a player. And he puts that player into that group. Gomez was in that group for a while too, and then wasn't in that group because he did something that disrespect. This is the kind of way this thing works. They're a fascinating organization because of that, and they've always been. But he's been allowed to do all this with very little media around him.
Yeah, the thing about Gomez that I think nobody was willing to talk about while he was there was he wasn't disrespectful or anything, but he just seemed to be too happy-go-lucky in the locker room after games, after losses, and it just didn't look good. And I think they sort of grew tired of that. I do.
Right. I mean, I don't know about Boston, Ty, but in Philly, this is another thing we always loved about the Devils. We talked about this before, you and I, Russ, in the press box. There was a number 27 playing in the preseason after Niedermeyer left. there was a devil with number 27 out there. You know what I mean? And it's just like, at least in Philly, and I'm pretty sure in Boston, like I don't expect there to be someone with Lucci's number next year. I think it's possible, but it would have to be an established player that comes in, who had that number already. But in New Jersey, that whole concept of the name on the back, your whole thing means you mean nothing. It's just the team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how do they do that in Boston, Ty?
They do and they don't. I mean,
Yeah.
Louis Erickson grabbed Andrew Ferens's number right after he left, and
Right.
that's an even swap, really.
Yeah, he's an established player. This was like a rookie. Yeah. This was like this was like I think it was Stefan Matteau or something like that was wearing 27. I forget who it was, but it was something.
Here's another ode to Lou that you'll never see and never hear about, because we're really friendly with the personnel over with the Flyers and the guys who work the building, and most of the time the equipment is cleared out while the team's there, before we get in, yep. While the GM is maybe there. They couldn't go in there if Lou Lamoriello was in there with the team. The equipment guys had to wait. They were frozen out. And sometimes that would delay us maybe like 10, 15 minutes. And we knew if there was a delay. Why was there a delay? Well, Lou's in there.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way he runs things.
Yeah, he runs it that way, and he always has, and it's a fascinating thing to watch. The whole concept of, of all that matters is your and I remember one time talking to somebody who said he wanted to do away with the name tag on the back of the jersey altogether. He just wanted to have numbers, and the NHL wouldn't let him do it. But that was just a symbolic thing about how he looks at things. You could totally see it.
Yeah, look how many years he held off on the third jersey.
Right. Oh, exactly.
He finally allowed the older jersey to come back. That took like 10 years of convincing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's one of a kind.
That's no, he is one of a kind, and he's just a fascinating figure who has not been covered much as a fascinating figure because he's been in New Jersey. That's what I think is interesting about what's about to occur here. He's very secretive, incredibly secretive about stuff.
Yeah. So does he want to be covered though? Some guys don't.
No, he's not gonna. There is going to be an issue, and to talk to Kevin's point about how powerful Shanahan is, Lou Lamoriello and Brian Burke are like tight as could be. I mean, Burke really had a horrible time in Toronto. I mean, Lamoriello talks to Burke before he takes this job and says, "What am I in for?" Yet he still takes the job. That's how much he believes in Shanahan, really more than anything else. That's really about, and this will go. I couldn't help but think today that all the reporters in Toronto, and this is a leaky organization over the years because it's just so many people covering it, are really in for something. That this is going to be a team that's going to be hard to get a scoop out of, really hard to get a scoop out of now, because that's just something that Lamoriello won't allow. And whether or not okay, maybe because there's another headed monster there. It is like the three-headed monster. Babcock might be talkative a little bit. Shanahan might be talkative, but my chances are Lou Lamoriello has already said I'm not coming in if that's the way it's going to be, because he's silent. I mean, I've never gotten a rumor out of New Jersey that's come from New Jersey, and I can say that with the exception of very few things, but that had nothing that were just lucky. Lou won't release anything, and Kevin, if he was here, will tell you he's even heard stories where other GMs have said, if I hear about this on a in a blog or in a newspaper somewhere, then the deal's off. Like, that's how strict he is about things. And when he got Kovalchuk, it was pretty out of nowhere. Like, people were talking about Kovalchuk. Remember, Ty? Boston was injured in that one.
Yeah, I mean, that was a year-long saga where you knew that Kovalchuk was going to be traded that year. You just wait, and you're thinking Rangers, Bruins, Kings.
Yeah.
It was everybody. You heard about everybody humanly imaginable. And then, sure enough, it comes and goes, and you wake up and you see Jersey.
Yeah.
They were in on it. So yeah, he's very silent. He moves quickly. It's interesting because he's 72 right now.
I know.
You have to wonder how long this is going to be. How long of a run is this going to be? 72. I mean, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. I mean, we honestly have to wonder that, and I think that's done purposely by the Leafs. They look at this, and I think they do view Kyle Dubas as the man of the future, like Mike said when we first started. And what better mentor is there, than Lou Lamoriello, and especially if it helps you now and in the future, because we know he has an eye for the future. He comes from a college background where you have to develop a freshman into a prolific senior, So this is a perfect guy for them, and I mean, like everything we've talked about, I just think it's interesting it's going to be tough to see if the leaks do get out of Toronto, because that's like the city of leaks. You hear about everything. From Dreger is the main guy, and obviously that had a connection with his cousin being Dave Nonis and everything like that. But it's going to be interesting to see who gets their scoops now and where they're coming from, because I don't know many guys that will give them. I mean, maybe Babcock will sneak something here and there, but even then, he's a guy full of cliches when you talk to him.
Babcock doesn't leak anything either.
No, he doesn't.
Shanahan's the best bet, but at the same time, Shanahan, I'm convinced the only time Shanahan leaks anything is when it's to his benefit, which was the whole Kessel-Pittsburgh thing that came out. That was to try to get other teams going on that. That was to say that we're talking to somebody. That was a design leak, and every leak out of Toronto that really has been. So now, if the Maple Leafs are going to war with the media, which they have been, if they've been in a war with the media since their beginnings probably, and it's continued on and on. The media has had the better of them the last couple of years. It feels like this is a Tet offensive back by bringing in Babcock and Lamoriello. These are two guys that won't be intimidated at all by the media, don't care about the media at all, don't have any desire to help them in any which way. Understand them. I mean, they're not going to be a jerk. Neither of them are going to be a jerk. They both know, but some guys know you have a job to do. These guys don't really care about that.
I mean, look, when Lou is in a press conference, he'll answer anything. But you got to get him. You got to get him to the press conference.
Right.
Like Team USA, when he's doing a Team USA, he will answer anything. He will talk about anything.
Oh, Team USA is totally different. I mean, it's funny how different. Like David Poyle's the same way. David Poyle will not say anything to you, but if you're talking about Team USA, he'll talk like crazy. And, that Team USA is a whole different ball of wax, because they don't really feel threatened, but it kind of is what it is. It's like there is only one country. That it's not like there's another place. These are the players we have. They're born here. They're different people. But with Team USA, I've always found it easier to talk to Poyle and Lou than it is beyond Team USA. It's very, with their own teams, it's a whole different war. I mean, Kevin, we were just talking about how this is basically a Tet offensive back at the media in Toronto. The media in Toronto now has to deal with pretty much the hardest, two of the more interesting people to deal with who aren't going to be intimidated by anything in Lamoriello and Babcock. Do you think?
No, that's true. Babcock, I've found him easy to deal with, to be honest. He's a great quote.
Both are. Like Russ said, both will talk if they're in a press conference, but getting them to the press conference is another story, maybe. But both will talk, and Babcock actually is kind of funny. He's a good quote. I agree with you.
Well, I think the difference between them and others is you'll be on their schedule. Like Babcock will come and talk to you every day, but he runs at a specific time, and so he gets to the rink at 6:32 or whatever it is. He leaves his house at the same time every morning.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it'll be one of those deals where, regardless of what's going on with the team, he's going to slot you, 12 minutes, and you better cram in everything you need in those 12 minutes or whatever it is that he decides to do. And this will be a little different with Lou, because for Lou, he's never really dealt with this sort of media crunch.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It'll be interesting, but they'll both.
Oh, that'll work out. I mean, it's really going to be fun. I mean, I talked a little bit while you were away about the core group that Lou has always had in New Jersey of players, and that's something I've always found he really believes in a big way, of having a leadership group of players. That really at times, other players would tell me that other players on the Devils would tell me that the core group they felt was more powerful than the coach in New Jersey at times. That they felt like that core group really had the ability to, this is something that the Maple Leafs direly need. They need that core. They need a core group to emerge somehow.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do. But it'll be interesting to see. Lou is prone to micromanage a little bit, so
yeah.
We'll see how that kind of all works out. Going back to the '96 World Cup, like, he wouldn't agree to take that job as GM until they agreed to give him total autonomy. And I remember Ron Wilson telling me a funny story about before he was going to make his pre-tournament speech to the players when they showed up at training camp. Lou approached him about 6 or 7 times and said, "What are you going to say?" And Ron said, I don't know what I'm going to say. And he said, "I usually find I'm better when I'm off the cup." He goes, "Well, I really need to know what you're going to say." I mean, he needed to know what Ron Wilson was going to say to the players on the, that's how far Lou takes it. He thinks of everything, and
Oh yeah, I mean, I knew somebody who worked in there who said, yeah, with the T-shirts that we would put out were approved by Lou Lamoriello before they went out. Like the T-shirts that we would print up for the games.
Unfortunately, Lou probably did approve the onion dip too, and that's black mark. That's still a black mark.
Yes, the famous onion dip in the press box during playoff games. Yes, that is something that the Devils don't exactly stand up to the Bruins standards in the press box.
I've heard about the onion dip. I've heard about the problems with it.
Oh yeah, Michelle Kenneth. Thank God for Michelle Kenneth. She's the only one who knows how to get it and knows how to get new onion dip and knows how to get chips. Without her, we'd be lost. But
nobody will ever live up to the fact that we were served lobster by the Boston Bruins.
Yes, no.
Hey, come to Boston. That's what happens, right?
That's true. That's every time Boston traded away one of their players this year. I'm like, damn.
I will say though, in the olden days, and still to a lesser extent now, but the Montreal Canadiens during the playoffs would have linen tablecloths and such for the media back in the old days. They had a much smaller press room than they have now, but you'd come in there and there'd be waiters. It was just like how
San Jose Sharks had like a chef and a carving station. I never dealt with that, but wow.
Well, the Blackhawks do that. They have a carving station.
Yeah, they do. I got meat carved a couple times this year, so to speak. Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, they definitely have they do a great job. I just think this is a fascinating story. I mean, I just think that of all the things that could have come together, Lou Lamoriello and the Maple Leafs just really is one of the best. It's just a gift that keeps giving for us in the media. There's so many angles to this. I can't imagine. Lou is going to deal with, Steve Simmons and Howard Berger and these guys who are not used to anybody like Lou Lamoriello. And it's all good. I mean, these are all good people, but it's just to see how that comes together, to see how they work together is going to be fascinating to me. I can't really imagine how that's going to go down. It's just kind of fun. Maybe it's only fun for us in the media to watch, but it is.
It's tough to find a negative.
No, there's really no downside to this, except for the fact, like you say, Ty, he is 72 years old. And but he doesn't seem like he's 72 years old. He's not.
The negative will be they will get way more coverage than he will be comfortable with. That's the negative.
Yeah, and the negative also is is he the person keeping on point now, or is the message coming from Shanahan? Like, I wonder where the message to keep on point's coming from, because he was always the guy. He was the guy who gave the message to the coaches and the media people, and and now is this Shanahan? And if will stories leak out from Toronto? Because Lou never let them leak out in New Jersey, but Shanahan's there too.
Fired him, so he's still probably the messenger.
Yeah, but I think people will be less intimidated by Lou if they have a friendship with Shanahan, because he was all powerful. In Lou we trust in New Jersey, and now there's a little bit of a buffer. Hey, there's a little bit of news here, and I don't know what it means, but the Coyotes have just sent out a press release saying that there's resolution with their legal dispute with the city of Glendale. So,
awesome. That's good. Hopefully the resolution is positive.
I'll read just a couple of paragraphs.
Yeah.
Here it says the Arizona Coyotes and the city of Glendale announced today that the two parties have agreed on a resolution on their ongoing legal dispute. The city will release details of the proposed amendments to the existing arena management agreement this morning on the city's website. The Glendale City Council will vote on the amendments to the agreement on this Friday at the Glendale City Hall. Details of the City Council meeting will also be posted. The revised agreement represents a positive outcome for both the city and the Coyotes, said Glendale Acting City Manager Dick Bowers. It also allows us to move forward in a way that keeps an important economic driver in our community. So, most people kind of thought that this was going to work out some way, shape, or form. And,
they reworked the deal, it sounds like.
Pardon me?
It sounds like they reworked the numbers.
Yeah, that's exactly that. And you kind of knew that was going to happen. I mean, let's face it, the deal was one-sided. You got a new sheriff in town, and when that happens, you got to give in a little bit. So
does this mean please tell me this means we're going to have more televised on the internet Glendale Council meetings like that?
Yeah, I'm sure. The case.
They were. Remember them?
whenever city council is involved in NHL, competition, there's a problem.
But we all watched. That's the sad part.
We all watched like crazy.
It was
I was still rooting for. I was still rooting for a return to Phoenix. I really was.
I was always rooting for that too. I was. I mean,
that's where, if they're going to be successful, that's where it's going to be. It's just that's how I feel about that, and I'm happy that they worked something out here. It sounds like they did anyways, because I do know there are some diehard fans in Phoenix or in Glendale and in Arizona in general. And I don't want to see that state lose a team, but I'm always going to have my doubts, my questions about Glendale. Just as a hockey city, just based on how difficult it seems to be to get to for a lot of fans, and I just think you got to be in a downtown city sort of area like Phoenix would be. So I mean, this is good. It's also bittersweet, I think, because I think you're going to have the same problems that you've been having for a few years now.
The only thing I can tell you is I read an article yesterday that talked about the events side of Glendale and that arena, and they're behind projections. They are. They're not making the same kind of money they thought they would. So we'll see. If this eases the losses, then maybe they'll figure it out.
The only thing about, look, it's in the wrong spot. I get it. I used to live in Arizona many hundreds of years ago. But, it's hard to get to every arena. Like, name me an arena in the NHL that's not hard to get to.
That's true, but most of the time when you're driving to that arena, you're not worried about being attacked by a chupacabra.
No, but like Ottawa's arena is ridiculously hard to get to.
But they're all hard. I mean, I live 40 miles away from Joe Louis Arena.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and it's not that. It's not as aggravating of a drive, but it's still a lengthy way. It's hard to get to Long Island.
It's really hard.
Yeah, and it'll be hard to get to Brooklyn, and getting to Madison Square Garden is no picnic. Trying to go to the Staples Center in L.A. like. If you gotta want it to be a fan.
It's very easy to get to the Philadelphia stadiums, I have to say.
Yeah, the Philadelphia ones are probably the easiest. Like I live, I want to say 10 miles from there, and I could literally get there in 20 minutes. I probably lived in the same proximity when I lived on Long Island to get to the Coliseum and couldn't get there in 20 minutes, and I couldn't get to the Garden in an hour unless I took the train. So you're right about most of them. You are.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, even to go to Philadelphia, if you're out in Jenkintown, or I've had to crawl up Broad Street.
Yeah.
No, that's for sure. I mean,
25 miles an hour.
You have to leave. You have to leave at a certain time where I live, which is out.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'm rooting for Glendale to make it. They've got a nice arena. And I think the ownership there is well-meaning, and there are some fans there, and I think it would be as we talked yesterday about the way the realignment would work, to have Las Vegas and Arizona and L.A. and Anaheim all within driving distance. I mean those are cities that they could get to. If you're an Arizona fan, you can drive to L.A., you can drive to Las Vegas. So. It completes a nice little corner of the world over there.
Yeah, it is good. Now, you know what? To finish up, I want to go back to what we talked about yesterday, because I want to tie his opinion on this too. Because after we got off, looked at what you had said, Kevin, looked at what you had said, Russ, looked at where I was saying, and I think I came up with the ultimate realignment of divisions based on all this. Okay. Now, Ty, did you hear any of this, or were you following any of what I wrote yesterday? And any of that?
No, I was unfortunately out all day.
Yeah, thanks for reading my stuff, Ty. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so no. Anyway, the idea was 8 4-team divisions, okay? And among these 4-team divisions, you would play the other teams in your division. The other 3 teams you would play 6 times. And every year you would have a sister division that you would play 4 times, and then you would play everybody else home and away once. So the idea, this is sort of it's just a kind of a different way of doing it. So this is what I think. This is where I think. I'm going to start with the Eastern divisions. Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Buffalo. We kind of decided that those were the 4 teams that should be together, right? Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Buffalo. Now, of course, Boston's not in there with Montreal right away, and that's one of the biggest problems with this whole thing, is trying to get Boston with Montreal, and Montreal with Quebec, and Montreal with Toronto, and and Toronto with Buffalo, all that stuff. Boston with the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils in that little loop there. Tampa, Florida, Carolina, and Nashville as a Southern division, and Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, Columbus. That was that. Now that I know before we had Where did I put Ottawa in this thing? I have Ottawa somewhere. Oh yeah, Ottawa. Oh yeah, I have. Okay, that's what I did. I moved Ottawa to Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, and Ottawa.
Okay.
Because that was the one team I was having trouble with. And I really wanted to keep Pittsburgh and Columbus together, and I figured that it didn't really matter.
Such a long-standing rival.
I know, but I want to give Columbus a shot here. Like I feel like they have a chance, and they really fit well with Philly and Pittsburgh and Washington. Those four teams, they have a similar thing to them in my mind. They really feel like Ottawa feels different than those teams. Ottawa feels more like Chicago, Detroit, Minnesota. So those are that's the Eastern Conference essentially. The Western Conference is LA, Anaheim, San Jose, and Vegas, like you talked about, which is different because I'm again separating Arizona and Vegas. But I still don't know how you can do it. I still don't think you should take San Jose and LA apart because I think that's such a rival. So Dallas, Colorado, Arizona, and St. Louis. So those four teams are really close to each other in proximity. Dallas, Arizona, Colorado, and St. Louis. Then you look on a map. Those are the four teams that make the most sense to be in the Central Division, so to speak. Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, Ottawa, and then the four Canadian teams in the other division, right? The four Western Canadian teams. Any objections?
It's so tough to take Boston, Montreal in the same division.
I know.
That's the hardest thing. I think that's like you already took apart one of the NHL's best rivalries with Chicago and Detroit. And
I'm putting them back together.
I know you're putting them back together, but you're witnessing, like, it just feels like those should be still together somehow. And I think doing that with Boston, Montreal would be, I mean, yes, by your projections, you play them 4 times a year, which is what you're playing them right now.
Yeah, so they're the sister division, so they still get to play 4 times.
It's such a hateful rivalry. It's such a part of what Boston hockey has all been about. Yeah, like when you grow up in Boston, you're a hockey fan. You're taught a few things. 1, Bobby Orr is the greatest player of all time. 2, you hate Montreal. That's like number 2. That's not even appreciating anyone else. You just hate Montreal. That's like your number 2 philosophy there.
Right.
So I just think it's sacrilegious for me to sit here and say I support that. So I'm doing this so I don't get my head kicked in when I walk outside today. So
right, I understand.
That's why I gotta go against it. But the other things I do like. Not gonna lie.
I mean, I think I don't know, Kevin. To be the Phoenix, Arizona thing, you're getting on me about Columbus and Pittsburgh. Arizona and Vegas don't even exist yet, right? So.
No, but they're going to be within driving distance. At some point you have to look at the practicality of it. You people from Phoenix can drive up to Vegas, and it's the same thing. I mean, now St. Louis and Chicago, which are great rivals, and you can drive there in a couple hours. Now they're apart. So. Yeah,
no, I agree. I mean, I think that I want to know how far. Isn't it a pretty good drive? I mean.
From where?
From Arizona, from Glendale. Let me put Glendale to Vegas on my thing and just see how far it is. I thought it was really too far to drive. Maybe I'm wrong.
You are wrong.
Because you lived out there.
I did.
All right. So we need a solution. We're still looking for answers. So send in your answers. I mean, I think that I'm getting closer. Do you like the idea of moving Ottawa in with Chicago, Detroit, and Minnesota?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, and I said this yesterday, and when I got off, I got a couple of emails from some of our readers, and they all understood the same deal. Like, there's no perfect solution, and Russ joked about it, but he was right on the money when he said, the way I presented it is it's not horrible. Well,
right.
That's all. That's all of these.
Yeah.
They finally get some sort of a good fit over there with, I mean, when I used to live in Arizona, I would drive to LA and I could drive to Vegas, and that all fits. But is there logic to having San Jose and LA together? Of course there is. Is there logic to having a Canadian division? Yeah, for sure. But and again, I think it's just a matter of personal preference. Like, I just think we have enough provincialism. That we don't need, to have the Canadians all together again,
Right.
Even worse. So, but Ottawa and Detroit, somebody's going to have to. I mean, it makes no sense for Ottawa to go where I put them. It probably makes more sense where with Detroit, at least it's,
I mean, that's only like, what, 3 or 4 hours?
What, from Ottawa?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a hike. Yeah, no.
Okay.
It's also one of the most expensive flights known to man, because I've tried to.
Just go to Ottawa.
It's $1,100 to fly to Ottawa.
Wow. Jeez.
Correct. There's only one flight. Otherwise you got to go through, Kathmandu to get there.
They don't want Americans in their capital city, obviously. Okay, so it's 4 hours and 40 minutes to drive from Phoenix to Vegas.
Yeah, that's doable.
Which
Well,
is
yeah,
the same distance as it is to drive from Philadelphia to Boston, 4 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, but again, most of the fans are not driving from Glendale. I mean,
that's from Phoenix. That's from Phoenix.
Oh, from Phoenix. Okay.
It's 4 hours and 30 minutes from Glendale, so according to Google Maps, at least. So that's a pretty good.
Is that if you go the speed limit?
Yeah, I mean there is no speed limit out there, right? I mean, aren't you in like some of those like areas where it says within reason or something like that on the posts? When I was a kid, I remember there before there were speed limits, there were signs out west. I'm sure you saw that too, Kevin. The signs are within reason or whatever. That there were no speed limits in Arizona when you lived there.
No.
I honestly, I've never been out that part of the country. I just picture Arizona, Nevada. I picture that as just Mad Max. That's what I think is happening out there. I've never been there, but I just think Mad Max is happening there.
That's awesome.
Well, my grandmother, and she was in her 80s at the time, said that when Armstrong put his foot down, he was actually in the desert outside of Arizona and not actually on the moon. So
I love that.
I was in the room. I have two aunts that were nuns, and I'm 11 years old, and my grandmother's making that case, and I was just about to start arguing with her when I have two aunts that were nuns, and it's the only time they were ever mad at me. They gave me one of those looks like, "Nope, don't go there." No, I didn't. I did not debate my grandmother about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Armstrong putting his foot down in the Arizona desert.
There's a great Mythbusters all about that. They devote a whole hour to why those things are real, like why the flag is stationary and not moving around.
The flag makes perfect sense.
The shadows, they actually recreated the entire thing, and you know why the shadows were weird?
Why?
Because they were reflecting off of parts of the moon is a very reflective surface in and of itself and shoots light. Light will come back in the opposite direction, and they showed it. They built a whole moonscape with moon type color, and they shot a spotlight across. They built a little guy getting onto his ship. They had the whole 9 yards, and why the footprints look the way they do, which is different.
The thing is if you were gonna fake it, why would you go to the trouble of shooting off a rocket to fake it? Like you would just show old footage of that.
Well, yeah, I had to shoot off the rocket.
Well, yeah, because there were people on the beach.
Right. The people
watch it live. Yeah,
that's a big event. I tried to go to a space shuttle launch one time and it got rained out, but they used to get great times. Anyway,
did you do a double-header space launch the next day or anything?
Yeah, right. Let's play too. Now, the sucky thing about that is it's like, we can't go today. We can't go again for another 6 weeks. Like they don't just wait till the next day.
Right.
The stars literally have to align. So, all right. This was a fun show. This was a Lou Lamoriello show. We appreciate Kevin jumping on, despite the fact you came from another place. And Ty for coming on coming on Thursdays. We appreciate Ty jumping in today. And Russ, as always, you've been doing the yeoman's work through the summer. We appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow. And if no one, assuming Brian Burke isn't hired to be the next general manager of the Los Angeles Kings, we'll be talking about. We're going to get into nominating for our awards. So that's still the plan. But it's been a pretty busy hockey news week. It's been pretty interesting. Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.